Hello and welcome back to another episode of Combustion RC. In today's video, we're going to be going from where we finished into bag L. So we're getting into our shocks. For this one, we are going to need our fluid, and it looks like here for the front shocks, we're using the 500 fluid. So you're going to need your bottle of 500 fluid. You're also going to need your O-ring grease or black grease, or you can use the green slime or shock oil. Actually, don't use black grease. Don't forget I said that. You're going to use either shock oil on your shaft and on the, where's the O-rings? These guys here, or green slime from Associated, which is also really fantastic stuff. Keeps your O-rings from swelling. Or this stuff right here from Sticky Kicks, the white grease or white lube. And this is specifically for diff rings, shock O-rings, and X-rings. So this is same kind of thing, basically. So as you can see here, it says the kit supplied oil is a great starting point when the ambient temperature is set around 75 degrees Fahrenheit. If it is cooler, you may need to use thinner oil. Likewise, if it is warmer, you may need to use thicker oil. We're just going to build it like it is because it's in the 90s. It's probably fine. No, it's not. And we're going to be going through bag L. So we're going to go ahead and open this up, set everything out the way it needs to be. Make sure you have your doubled over piece and your 4 folded over piece in case we need to fill these more than once and you need to drain some out. Otherwise, this is just going to be a safety precaution. All right, so we're back over here. We've got our bag of parts completely undone. And if you're still trying to do the napkin trick, you notice that there's a lot more in this bag than you might have thought. So there's a few things we're going to want to do before we go and just start building things. There's a few things that we want to just take care of up front. One of which you probably already noticed. So we need these guys because we've got rod ends and we've got balls for those rod ends. So let's go ahead and just get those put in so that those are done and out of the way. Some of this stuff is going to tell you to do in just a minute. We're just preemptively striking, I guess you could say. There's a few things we just want to get taken care of right off the bat. There we go. So those are done. The other thing you're going to want to do is, just like on your bell crank assembly with that servo saver, there is a ridge inside of here that big O-ring is going to go into. So we're going to go ahead and take care of those right up front as well. And those just tuck down right in there. And then for the emulsion caps, which are what these are, they have a bleeder screw. They're called emulsion caps. These are going to actually, let's see if it shows it on here. Interesting. I finally found something else they missed in the manual. Well, would you look at that? It is not in here at all. It is on the over here. It's just not in the actual build section. So these teeny tiny O-rings are going to go on your teeny tiny screws, and these are for your emulsion caps there. These are your bleeder screws. And these are the same as the bleeder screw on basically on a brake caliper if you've ever bled brakes on a real car. And again, some of these things, it's helpful to keep some nails. So if your nails are getting long, just hold off on cutting them there, fellas. I know you like to have short nails. I'm the same way, especially being a bass player. It's like having a pick on the end of my finger. I hate it. But while we're building, keep those nails for getting those little guys like this. You know, they're flat and you can still pick them up pretty nicely. And the next thing we're gonna do is on the bottom of the shock body, you'll see there's a ridge right there. And that ridge is going to be where this slightly smaller O-ring goes. just like so. On both of them. Now let me see if this actually tells you on this next page, because it does not tell you on here. They kind of forgot something. Yes, so they do tell you on the next one that the other O-ring goes inside of your shock cap. So they just forgot to say it in the actual build steps. So I'm telling you now, okay? This big thick O-ring, you'll see a ridge that's down inside of your shock cap. You're gonna wanna just get that down in there as best as you can. You kind of got to fight it down in just a little bit. Once it's in, you'll know, because it'll seat and it won't have any bevels in it or any buckles in it. So once it's in, it'll be just like that, nicely seated down in that line around the head of the top of the cap. And that can sometimes be easier said than done. Depends on how much that O-ring is going to try to fight you. There you go. And you can see the hole in there. That's where your bleeder screw goes to bleed the air out of them. All right. So that's done. Now we're going to actually get on to our building of our shock bodies here. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is go ahead. And this is something that they don't tell you have to do this. I do this just for the sake of habit, I guess you could say. So this is for our shock O-rings. So just squirt it on there, smush them all around. Yeah, they're gonna be gross. Yeah, they're gonna be gooey. But that is perfectly fine. Okay? Do you want to wipe off some excess? That's fine. You can do that. We wipe off the excess. But I'll show you why we do that in a minute. And it's just because this stuff helps keep these in good shape. I'm gonna grab a shock body, and you're gonna be working in this little crevice right here. One thing that I like to have handy is where did it go? Oh, here it is. Rolled over the other side of the desk. I like to have my 1.5 handy, because there's these little plastic pieces you gotta push down here, and you gotta make sure that they're flat in the bottom. So that's these guys here. The smaller one with the flange is going to go down in first. And then this one is going to be in the middle. And then this one is going to be on the bottom facing up. So this one, the bevel faces in the shock. This one's then an O-ring, middle O-ring, and then this faces to the bottom of the shock. I should say this faces to the inside of the big body. So first off, we're gonna put that in there and drop it in. Like I said, this is when you need your 1.5. Just go right in the middle of it and kind of waller it around until it drops in, like so. Then you're gonna grab one of your O-rings and push it in. Grab your washer, push it in. Another O-ring. And then the larger bottom hat, which is gonna sit in that groove. And that bevel is designed to fit in that hole on the bottom. And this gets sealed by that O-ring that we just put on there. So then you're gonna thread that on. Just gonna spin it down good. Give it a good hand tight. Now, these will eventually swell a little bit and pull on here, so that will feel like a lot more than hand tight. If you want to make sure that it's more than hand tight, you can definitely do that. I'm not sure 100% on what size that is. It's definitely not anything small enough to be a nut driver, but it's also not big enough to be our 17mm wrench here, because that's what the body is. See, the body is what that goes on. This is not. This is probably 14mm, but you can use an actual wrench for that as well. So, but we don't really need that, so that's what we're gonna do. I guess you can grab it around with this here and give it a good snug if you want to, because that inner area will fit. All right, so that's the bottom done of that one. So let's go ahead and build both of those. So remember, you're gonna have your smaller one in first. It's gonna want to flip on you, so then you just gotta work it in. An O-ring. The washer. Another O-ring. The bottom hat-looking one. And then our bottom cap. Now, if you're thinking that's not much of a cap, since it's got a giant hole in it, just remember that giant hole in the middle of it is where your shock, that's where your piston comes through at. So it's going to fill that hole entirely, okay? So our shock bodies are done, so you can set those back aside. Now we're gonna move on to our pistons, which, as you can see here, is going to be this rubber-coated washer on first. Oops, sorry. On the small end, you see on the small end, there's the little edge gonna set on. On the big end, that is the same size as your eyelets, these eyelets. So you're gonna put your rubber dealio on there first. What am I trying to say here? Washer. Rubberized washer. Rubber-coated washer. Remember, shock boots must be installed before attaching the rod in. That's these guys here. These are rubber shock boots that keep all the dirt out of your shocks. These aren't necessarily needed. On all of our old kits, they didn't have them. However, on our old kits, if you didn't rebuild your shocks every 2 races, they would be literally full of dirt, because the speed these guys run and the speed those shocks move, these things suck in a lot more dirt than a 10 scale does. Food for thought. You can use it, you cannot. Highly recommend using it. All right, what was I doing? Oh yes, shocks. So then we got our pistons here, and these are 4-hole, as you can tell. 2 of them are 1.5, 2 of them are 1.6 millimeter. And that's gonna go facing down. You'll see that washer is gonna fit right nicely in that groove that's etched in there, just like so. So it should fit, nice and seated like that. Okay, and then you're going to put your teeny tiny little nut on here. Now that teeny tiny little nut is this guy here. If you can hang on to it. Just get it started. This is when you're gonna need your 5 millimeter driver. So I got my 5 millimeter here. And if you're like, wow, all I'm doing is spinning this in my hand. Exactly. You can use pliers. I do not recommend using pliers on this part though, because if you use pliers on here, the teeth of the pliers are actually going to dig into this, and it's going to cause it to get sharp edges, which is going to cut your O-rings, and you're going to have a shock leak the first time you go out and run. So you want something like this, that's an actual shock plier, that is smooth in here, so you can grab a hold of it. And this doesn't say what the diameter of these bodies are, so we're just gonna guesstimate that they're right there. You can hear a little bit of dirt in there from the last one I redid, so I'm gonna try to wipe that out real quick. There we go. So then you're gonna hold it tight, squeeze it tight, but you're not gonna get grooves on it because it is not a serrated plier. And then just tighten that down nice and snug. You should be onto the little nylock insert in that nut by this point. So there's one shock piston done, and we're gonna grab the other one and do the same thing. So rubber coated washer, piston, and nut. Shock pliers. There we go. Also, I just realized this has measurements right here. I could have checked it. It is not a 3.2. It's not a 4.3. It's just in between there. It's probably a 4.2 because that is right there. So then, yep, see 4.0 is the top one. So that's the one you want to use to hold that. Pretty cool. These are called shock pliers. These are from Sticky Kicks. You can get them from multiple different brands. I have the Sticky Kicks one because they're nice and they came with my Sticky Kicks tool set. All right, so now that we've done that, Now you're going to want to bring this over because you're going to be putting some shock fluid on these. And that's how we're going to get them to help seat into the shock bodies. You're just going to run a line of shock fluid all the way up them. Okay, because as we put them into the shock body, you're going to be pushing it into that O-ring, which is another reason that we grease those O-rings. And then you're just going to give it a spin as you pull it through so that that shock oil seats nicely in there, okay? You're going to do that on both of these before we move on to the next step. All right, so now, before we go any further, you're going to need your boot, and it's got a little groove at the top that pops over this, and then the bottom of it just sets on the actual shock shaft, just like so. There we go. And then that's all there is to it. Then you push it up, push it straight up, make sure not to twist it. Okay. You're gonna grab with your shock pliers again so you don't get scratches. And we're going to just like turnbuckles, but hopefully easier, and get that eyelet on there. Okay, just like that. Pull that down, run just a little bit of shock fluid across here. And these, you're gonna want to make sure that that beveled edge right there, see how it's got the bevel edge? You wanna make sure that beveled edge faces the bottom of the shock because that's the top cup for the spring. And then just push that up and over. Give it a little wobble. I sometimes do a back thread just to make sure I'm seated good before I start spinning, because the last thing you want to do is cross thread your shock cap. I've done it. It is definitely not ideal. Then you're just going to work that all the way up. So the best way to do that is to grab a hold of the bottom of your shock so that it doesn't move, and just work it and work it and work it. It looks like they actually don't put it all the way up. We've got it about 3 or 4 threads down, which if you have a white paint marker, that's really easy to do. All right, now I'm going to do it with this. I'm gonna see if a black Sharpie will show up. I'm not sure if it will or not, but it's worth a shot. Usually you want to use a paint marker for this. Okay, so I've got a line there. I don't even know if you can see it in the video. Barely. I mean, it's barely visible. But now I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 looks to be about the gap they have on here in the image. So we're just going to do 5 turns down. And I'm going to do that on both of these. And all this does is, since there's an O-ring on this here, that rubber will heat up and grab this aluminum, and it will end up causing it to bind, and then you'll never be able to get that thing to actually want to line up. That just tried to cross thread on me. Don't want that. Let's try and do it again. Come on. There, it hit the oil. I didn't get the oil all the way down, so it was really sticky at the bottom. This isn't exactly what that spot's designed for. That spot actually has a T on it. I think it's designed to hold a Traxxas Ultra Shock body. which is about the right diameter for that. But hey, you know, if you just keep a grip on it, it works for doing that. 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Now those are set to the identical length as far as the collars. Now we are ready to add our fluid and go on, which you can, says here, refer to filling instructions on page 19, stock emulsion build, or page 20, optional bladder build during the step. I'm not a fan of bladder shocks, so I'm not even worried about that. These are emulsions, so we're gonna go ahead and do this as the emulsion build calls for. These 1.5s usually are, yes. Okay, this is the one time you will not put thread lock on something going in aluminum on this, because these teeny tiny screws, if you have thread lock on them, you'll snap them, period. Okay, so you don't put your spring on before you bleed. So you're gonna get that nice and full. These bodies are massive, that is so much oil. You're gonna push your piston up, but not all the way. You bring it to about here, and then pull down, and then push up again. Not all the way. Do it real slow. You're trying to push those bubbles to the surface. Okay, we want to try to push out the air. Now, if you want to do it proper, you have a stand that you can put this in. You can just set them in there and let all the bubbles come out of them for about 20 minutes, and then you can go do it. Who said I was proper, though? If you're at the track, you don't have 20 minutes to do it, so we're gonna show you how to do it the quick way. All right. Then you just cap it to the top. And since we know that we don't have to loosen this, you're gonna put your grabber back on the bottom. Snug it up real good so that it doesn't leak. All right. Now, you come over here at a slight angle. You're gonna push that piston all the way up and put your screw in. You're gonna give this an up and down pump 40 times. So count to 40. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you don't have a lot of grip, you can put a wrench to the bottom. 6, 7, 8,
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
And then this time come all the way up with it. Hold it up top. Back your bleeder screw off just a little. Not all the way out. Just enough so fluid can move if it needs to. And then back in. We did get a touch of fluid out of there, not much. And then if all is good, it should stay like that and not try to suck back in. Same with pushing in, only a slight out, and that's just from the pressure move, perfect. If it like shoots back out at you, that's not perfect. Then you want to put these on, always put your color to the bottom. Okay, you're gonna pull that up, you're gonna push your boot up, you're gonna pull this over, and make sure that these holes are lined up and down. And then try to push your boot down. You might have to reach in like this to get it to go down. Just careful not to tear your boot. And then let your spring down. 5 turns is perfect. That's like the right amount. That's the perfect amount of tension on there. So that's awesome. All right, so now you're gonna take these long set screws, which are called all threads. Because at this point, it's no longer just a little set grub screw. It's now an all thread screw. And you're gonna go in either side. You can see they're identical, doesn't matter. You're gonna make sure it goes all the way through. So it keeps some pressure, because it will try to spread them apart. You can use your speed driver on this as well. If this is the one time you get to use your 1.5 bit on a speed driver, for real. It's not that big of a deal though, till you do it by hand while we're building. If you're at the track and you're in a hurry, sure. All right, and then these guys here are the upper eyelets that are going to go on the shock. You just snap those in like so. Always make sure that they're snapped in on this side to where you got one screw facing out this way and the other screw going to face out this way. You always want your bleeder screws to face out on the car, not in to the inside like this, because if they're out, if they start to back out, you can make sure they're tight. I always check them before each race just to make sure they didn't back out any. If they're inside like this, you can't do that. So you always want to make sure that they're facing out, okay? But there's one shot completed, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next one. Now, if you've got it that full and you can already see that it's leaking over, definitely go ahead and wipe that off. You know, maybe even go ahead and run across the top and try to pull some of that excess. You know, we don't need all that on there. We're gonna put our cap on, just like we did the last time. Back turn it until it seats so we don't cross thread it. Our pliers. Give it a little snug. It's all the way tight. Perfect. Then, just like last time, get your 1.5 on the bleeder screw. I'm going to slowly push this all the way up at a slight angle. Get your bleeder screw in. And then we're going to do our 40. And one final push to the top. See if we get any excess bleed out on us. That one we did. I figured we would. All right. So then that's done. And we are just like the last one. Perfect. So then we're going to do our spring. Our bottom cup. Push that down. Grab this guy here. That's it, just drive it through. What's crazy is the size of these shock bodies. You use nearly an entire bottle. This is the same size bottle as what comes in like the Associated 10 scale kits, which you can do all 4 shocks with and still have over half the bottle left. So it gives you an idea of the difference between the sizes. 8 scales, you need big bottles, which is why there's some brands out there that sell 6-ounce bottles versus your normal 4-ounce bottles for all the guys that run 8 scale. All right, that's nicely done. So we'll make our bleeder face this side because the other one faces the other way. And then put our guy through here. Nice. I'm gonna move this away since it has shock fluid all over it. We'll need that for our rears, which are next. There's a trick on this I do want to show you as well. And yeah, I did add a few more pink washers here that I had, so all good. They do note black screw is right-hand thread and goes on the left side. So remember that is not left staring at the front of it, that is driver's side, left, this over here. So if you're sitting in the car, it's your left. If you're staring at the front of it, it's your right. But that's gonna go over here, and that's gonna make it to where every time that goes up, it's not gonna wanna loosen, it's actually gonna wanna tighten. And then your silver one goes on the right side of the car, which if you're facing the front, is the left. Kind of like stage left and stage right if you've ever worked in audiovisual. So we're gonna go ahead and, which hole did they want it in on the bottom? Does it say? Stock shock position is inside hole on the arm and middle hole on the tower. But we did inside hole in the tower, not middle. And I think we're gonna go ahead and do outside hole on the arm because like I said, I tend to like my shocks a little more laid down. We don't have a droop gauge, but it does say that their stock droop is 115.5 millimeter and stock ride height in the front is 24 millimeter. If using a droop gauge, add 4 millimeter. Okay, or plus 4 millimeter. Cool. I don't have a caliper, or I do have a ride height gauge. my ride height gauge goes all the way up to 40. So we got plenty of room there. We got the J Concepts ride height gauge. And then this one's a left-hand thread. Just remember that, folks. And I believe, if I remember right, this is a 5.5 as well. Yeah. Give it a little push to get it started. This is the one thing I don't have speed tips of is 5.5 and 7s. That would be really handy. And then you're gonna get your shock top on there like that. Oh, there's the nylock. Maybe I could get away with it. I don't want shocks falling off just to have some pink washers on there. Hang on now. My stand I use is getting a little. There's a little pink on there too because I did mount the body to get that factory body set in place. I'll show you an image of that at the end of this video. Ooh, okay. I thought I made it on the other side, but I didn't. It's okay. All right, I'll lay that down. We're gonna give it a push and twist to get it started. Then we're gonna go put our top on here. All right, and there is our front shocks. So next we're going to go to bag M, which is our rear shocks. Rear shocks are identical. So we're gonna go ahead and pause the video and you do your rear shocks with just you. Go back through what you have to do. Just make sure that on your rear, you're using your 600 weight. That's the only difference between the front and the rear. Otherwise, they are built identical to the front ones. They're just longer. So you're gonna use even more fluid on your rears. And then we'll have pretty much everything done. And then after that, we'll be on to electronics mounting, I believe. We're getting close to. Yep, there we go. Servo mounts, the next thing. We're getting close, guys. We're getting close. So I'm going to probably leave the shocks as the last thing we do today because by the time you get everything unbagged and everything, you're going to be at about 1.5 to 2 hours. So that's going to be it for this video. Look forward to seeing the next one, though. So until next time, keep the rubber side down, the shiny side up, and remember to stay in the groove.